Well, welcome everybody. The future of learning is here, and we're creating it, and we're really on the verge of the most significant shift in education since really the Industrial Revolution. The pandemic has accelerated the use of technology for learning, and with the advent of AI, we're really on the edge of a cliff here. It's kind of like the Mission Impossible, where you drive that motorcycle up to the edge of the cliff, and then you realize we need to change things up in order to make it on the train. I don't know if you saw the very latest one, but, we're going to have to do something here. And I think really, the future it's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And there's a practical side of things. And that's what we're really looking at right now with the teachers that we have among us, is that practical edge. So when we really hit the ground and where tech meets learning and where teachers meet students, is what we're really looking at, because there's a lot of high level stuff, but what does it really all boil down to? So I just wanted to give a moment here to my co-moderator. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Victor Rivero. I'm the editor-in-chief of EdTech Digest, and we're a publication in the education technology space that deals with the intersection of learning and technology. And we also have an awards program, the largest in the world for education technology, called the EdTech Awards. And we're moving into events as well, where we have events that bring together school district technology leadership with the solution providers that they're serving them. So that said, my co-moderator is Sean. And Sean?
Well, hi, I'm Sean Salai. I'm a culture reporter at the Washington Times newspaper here in Washington, D.C. So I cover education. I am not a bot or an android or anything like that. I did teach high school for 6 years at Jesuit high schools in Kansas City, Tampa, and New Orleans, and was a speech and debate coach in the National Forensics League, taught 3 years of 8th graders, taught a summer of kindergarten, and then I've been kind of covering trends and things more statistically for the newspaper. So it's great to be with you. And I want to introduce a very special guest, Bill Salak, the Chief Technology Officer of Brainly. And Bill has served as Brainly's CTO for close to 5 years now. He is responsible for establishing the company's technical vision and leading all aspects of technology development, with a key focus on AI and its role in education. And I know I'm going to appreciate his insights today, because I got out of the classroom just in time for this blizzard of artificial intelligence. Before covering to Brainly, Bill was the CTO of multiple internet and web development companies. He led technology projects for companies including Age of Learning, AOL, which some of us still remember, Educational Testing Systems, Film LA, Hasbro, HBO, Highlights for Children, NBC Universal, and the U.S. Army. Well, that's quite a mix of things. So I'm going to hand it back to Victor. He's got some more introductions.
Yeah. So in doing these introductions, I want to have each of the teachers that I'm about to introduce respond with their number of years of teaching and what has been a highlight for you over this past school year. So I'll start with Anne Rafferty, who's an English teacher at Williams Middle Magnet School in Tampa, Florida. And so Mary, how many years have you been in teaching, and what's been a highlight for you over this past school year?
I just finished year 40. So I've been around a while. I guess the highlight of my year, I got to loop with my kids for the first time, and working with them for a second year was incredible, because we were able to do all kinds of things, because I knew the kids and they knew me, and we were able to fly through things. And then another highlight, if I may, was they nominated me for Brainly's Educator of the Year. And that made me feel really good, because they've taught me so much about technology and how to use it effectively in my classroom. And it didn't come from a professional development. It came from my students. And so that really did. All the Teacher of the Year stuff is wonderful, but when it's your kids, it means so much more.
Wow, thank you, Mary Ann. Now I'm going to introduce Cody Ashley. He's a history teacher at Cristoval Middle School and High School in Cristoval, Texas. And Cody, same questions for you.
Oh, hello. Yes, my name's Cody Ashley. I teach history. I've taught several other things in the past, business classes, taught English a little bit. I'm also a coach. I'm a football coach and head baseball coach at the school we're at, Christoval. This will be my 14th year I'm going into. The highlight, on the sports side, their baseball program's new, and we won our district for the first time this year, made the playoffs. So that was a lot of people excited about that. And then, in the classroom, my Texas history kids, they made improvements. We have our state assessments, and I guess the school was pretty pleased with our results on that. So that was kind of a highlight. I just enjoy working with kids, building relationships with them. That just seems to, be the most important part of the job is, building relationships and just seeing them grow from the beginning of the year till the end of the year.
Oh, wow. That's great. Heather Haas is a science teacher at John Glenn High School in Walkerton, Indiana. What has been a highlight for you this past year? And by the way, how many years have you been involved with teaching?
I am starting my 15th year teaching science, and a highlight of my year every time that I'm asked is we do something called the Summit Awards at our school, and that's where our top 10 students select an influential educator, and they ask you to attend it with them, and they write a speech and you write a speech and we have a dinner. It's a real honor. And so this year I was asked by a student I had as an eighth grader, a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and a senior. She likes science a lot, and she's going on to school for to be a doctor, and it's just amazing to be a part of their life like that. So I think that's always the highlight of my life, is getting asked to go to the Summit Award. It is the thing that I will miss the most about LaVille High School, because it is definitely an honor.
Oh, wow. Well, good for you. That sounds pretty important. Like it was pretty important work. Well, at this point, I want to turn over the moderation to my co-moderator, Sean, who has some questions for everyone. And so, Sean.
Well, I just wanted to get the ball rolling with some discussion about how artificial intelligence can and will be implemented in the classroom. And I'm 43 years old, so I'm kind of right on that kind of dividing line of people who have one foot in the analog world and one foot in the digital world. So I'm still old enough to remember rotary phones and fax machines and beepers. And at the same time, when I got to college at Wabash College as a freshman in Indiana, they had just put in email and things like that. And so I've kind of been growing into this myself. And something I'm curious about is just to hear kind of the consolations and the desolations, the joys and challenges of those who are in the classroom at the moment. When I was teaching at Jesuit High School in Tampa from 2010 to 2014, we had a lady come in from the Center of Catholic Schools Effectiveness at Loyola University, Chicago. And we had an IT audit where they redid all of our technology. And at the time, all of our technology was in one closet called the IT closet. And it was just a jumble of wires and things going here and there. And we had very outdated desktop computers. And sometimes in a private school, you're on the leading edge of these things. We brought in smart boards and iPads, and eventually they went one-to-one with iPads. And the one thing that the lady said to us was, what year do you think you're teaching for with your students? And everybody had a different guess for that. Some people said the year they graduate or the year that they enter the workforce. And she said, statistically speaking, most high schools at the time were teaching for the year 1999, technologically speaking, which made me feel great because that's when I graduated from high school. And at the same time, her challenge to us was, as a faculty, to kind of incorporate new technology, because she said students are going to be entering the workforce and using this. And we all reacted with various degrees of energy and panic and fear about this in terms of trying to use things in the classroom that we hadn't been using. And then I taught a little bit during the pandemic, going to wireless and remote stuff. And I got out of the classroom in time for OpenAI and ChatGPT. So I have no idea what's going on now other than writing stories about this in the newspaper. So just some questions I want to throw out there to think about. How is AI already being used in your classroom? Maybe you were using it even before ChatGPT came on the scene in December. What is your current impression of AI in the classroom? Some of us may be more or less aware of it, even being present or even being part of students' lives. Has it changed at all over the past year? So as we've seen these new technologies, have you seen any changes? And do your students use AI, either at home or in the classroom? And if so, how? So I just want to kind of pause for a moment and let that sink in. And if anyone wants to jump in, the questions are, how is AI already being used in your classroom? What's your current impression of its use in the classroom? And has it changed over the last year? And do your students use AI, and how? And that may extend even to the world outside the classroom.
I can jump in here. I won't say that I have used AI a lot in the classroom, as it was becoming kind of new to me right at the end of the year as my students were introducing it to me with papers that they were writing for other classes I do. As a science teacher, I found during COVID that my students were doing a lot of copying and pasting. So I went back to old school journaling. So I like push things out through LMS, but then I'll have them a lot of times write things still in their journals. And then I will critique that work inside of the journal for them. So I was hearing these things from other teachers and from students with cheating. So that would be my first impression, was kind of this is going to be horrible, right? I did some investigating, and I did see some ways that you could use it in the classroom to even do lesson planning, and being able to match that to the national standards when it comes to science, and being able to not necessarily get lessons. So they're not giving me like a copied lesson that I just do their plans and activities, more of giving me ideas of things that I might do to meet this standard, to hit that activity or that learning module. I was amazed by it. So that's how I see I can use it. I have some new teachers that I know that have been really struggling with lesson planning. I'm going to tell them about this. I think it may be very helpful for them. So although I probably was leaning towards, oh, they're writing the papers, there was a negative thing there. As we started to look at it, and we use turnitin.com at our school to have the papers go through, Turnitin was catching it a lot of times. So we were able to say, oh, okay, you guys are using this, and talk to them about that. So I feel like it could be definitely manageable, and it could definitely help in the classroom when I'm doing something like a lab where I might need to answer a lot of questions. This happens a lot. And then I could have my students in their groups kind of using the bot to ask questions, while I would be able to be free and float around and fix problems and fires and that kind of stuff. Grade things right on cue, that kind of stuff. So I'm talking a lot, so I don't want to take up too much more time, but that's kind of my feel for it. I was definitely negative, and I've kind of changed more to positive, and now I'm much more excited about it.
Well, let me just ask one follow-up question. That was great,
Okay.
by the way. Just as a former teacher, how would I go about making a lesson plan with artificial intelligence?
That's what I thought. I was like, how could this happen? So when you go on there, what you do is basically tell them kind of the subject matter, so I started really simple, like, okay, we'll start with scientific method. So I'm going to put scientific method in, and I had to type in some details. So I had to give it some information about what I might teach in that unit. So, students are going to be learning how to create a hypothesis, set up an experiment. I even threw some vocabulary in there, and then it spit out a lesson plan starting with the objective on down of anything that I might want to do to kind of reinforce this, and some activities I might do, some labs I might do, some vocabulary I might reinforce, ways I might want to reinforce that. And I was amazed by it, and scared a little bit, but really amazed that it could do that. Really, it was amazing. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I appreciate you putting your finger on the fear as well, because I think that for those of us who have been in the classroom in the past or there now, a lot of times we can feel a little trepidatious about these things. And You know, one thing that always comforts me is to know that the traditional things never go out of style. Kids always need
Right.
to learn reading, writing, arithmetic. They always have to learn how to take notes. And at the same time, the workforce and the world that they're going to be entering is a world where these things are being used.
Right.
And so
Right.
for those of us who are from older generations, we have to challenge ourselves to kind of engage things that we normally wouldn't be using. Over the
Definitely.
past several months, I've been writing a lot of articles for the Washington Times just about the plagiarism issue that you brought up, and kind of looking at how Turnitin.com has tried to deal with that, and Brainly has AI that they're using on their platform. And Bill, you have so much experience about this. I wonder if there's anything you can share just in terms of people who might tune into this webinar and be wondering, well, that all sounds great, but how do I keep the kids from cheating with this? Or how do I use it in a way that is maybe safe and secure or free from academic dishonesty? Do you have any thoughts or wisdom on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And this fear that, approaching this with a bit of fear, with a bit of trepidation, understanding that it is changing things. This is an important first step to recognize that access to information and gating access to information is no longer the way that we need to be teaching in the future. Now, that may seem kind of weird if you just take it at face value, but if you think about teaching back when I was in high school, and I'm a little bit older than you, Sean, so I totally can relate to the things that you've said. But when I went to high school, access to information was the primary way in which we were taught. So we were lectured, we had certain assignments, we were spoon-fed information, we had to go seek answers. So it was like, here's the question, find it in your textbook, find it in your resource materials, go seek out the answer. And the act of seeking, finding, and then regurgitating the answer was proof of learning, or at least that was the method by which we were taught. This is a world in which we have way more information than I ever had in high school in our pockets. We all have a supercomputer in our pockets. These mobile phones have the answers. And now with generative AI, it just makes it easier to access that information. So access to information is no longer the gatekeeper. This is no longer proof of knowledge, right? It's proof that you can find the knowledge. And what we're talking about here is when people are finding information very quickly, how do we prove or how do we create some friction where we cause them to digest the information, where we cause them to assess it and understand it? And in fact, this is a new skill that I think that we need to be focused on, because kids are getting tons of information and not all of it's correct. So rather than teaching ways to access information, we need to teach kids ways to vet the information they already have access to, so that they become better critical thinkers. And I think this is really at the heart of that fear and trepidation. It's like, hey, if access to information is so easy and kids can just copy it, what are they learning? How are they evaluating this information? How are they actually assessing the things that they're copying? That skill set needs to be focused on, because this generative AI isn't always correct, right? And it's not always hitting your points as teachers when you're saying, write me an essay, or, explain this, prove to me that you understand how to apply this concept. Generative AI isn't always going to do this correctly. And you want your students to be able to assess that incorrect nature of the response and be able to correct it themselves. Exactly. And I'm not going to pretend like I have the answers on how we do that or how teachers do that. I think that's one of the hardest problems that we're facing. But I do see a ton of opportunities with AI outside of that particular space. But specifically when it comes to that problem that you're describing, I think it's about developing that new critical thinking skill set where we no longer consider teaching kids how to find information using, when I was in school, the Dewey Decimal System was something I was actually taught, right? But now I'm just going on Google and I'm like, okay, well, now I've got 10 versions of the answer. Which one's most correct for my needs right now?
Yeah, that's fascinating. In some ways, it's a challenge that educators have always faced, which is how do you go beyond rote memorization and repetition? How do you get into that deeper uh, sort of subtle analysis that something like ChatGPT can't do? Because when you look at generative AI, it may be able to pass a bar exam or a medical exam, but a lot of times when people have tried to write papers with it, it only cites up to a certain year. It messes up citations. It quotes things in the wrong way. And so it's kind of writing essays like an eighth grader in a way that, you know, the kid is like compiling the facts, but they're kind of struggling to analyze. And I wonder, looking at some of our veteran teachers here, like you, Marianne, the Brainly Teacher of the Year, as I believe, um, what can you teach us about how you get beyond the surface with kids in your classroom? Like, what are some tricks of the trade? And maybe they're not even fancy tricks or new tricks, but just skills that might guide an educator in the classroom.
It's been interesting listening because I was an English major in the 1970s. So my home away from home was the library stacks, where I spent hours attempting to access information and from books and whittle it down to what was important. Now it's interesting. One of the things I did at the end of last school year was I had gave my kids different topics and had them write a paragraph. And I went on I always get the initials, Chat GPT, and I always get them mixed up. But I pulled paragraphs from there, and my school is not one to one. We are not um, technology based in any way, shape, or form. Um, and what I did with the kids was they wrote their paragraph. I pulled a paragraph off Chat GPT, and we put them up, and they had to guess which one was which one was written by one of their classmates, which one was written by the bot. And it was so interesting to listen to what they had to say. Things like they've never been on a roller coaster. That has to be the one that was generated. Whereas you can really tell in this one that they know what it's like to be scared. So as they go on to eighth grade and then to high school, they already have this in their head that just pulling it off the internet isn't enough. I do like what Bill said about having them evaluate information. There's an old article from the Atlantic called Is Google Making Us Stupid? And if you never read it, you should. um, my seventh graders read it every year. And we do a debate, and their conclusion is always the same for the last 5 years, is that Google isn't making us stupid, it's making us lazy. And so getting the skills to be able to evaluate the information that they're getting at their fingertips that took me hours in the stacks to get, they've really got to have that skill narrowed down before they go further.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me how you have to kind of shift the mentality. Like when I was in public high school in the late 90s in Indiana, we had an AP English teacher who took us to a community college library, and she taught us to take an index card for each source and, you know, write out like the source and then create like a box of sources to write a paper. Today, kids hardly even set foot in the library to write a paper. They can do it all off of online journals. And hopefully in high school, we teach them not to use Wikipedia for everything or Google. But what fascinates me about what you did with your students, Marianne, with that little exercise is that you put up two pieces of writing in front of them, one that was a real authentic piece and one that was the AI generated piece. And you got the kids to kind of use qualitative evaluation skills, just even reflecting on the presence of this in their lives. And I bet you got some really fascinating responses, and you probably saw some gears turning in their heads of insights they were gaining. Are there any other sort of tricks or advice you would have for maybe younger teachers who are kind of a little, they know the technology, but maybe they're not sure how to bring this into the classroom?
I think, don't be scared. Just jump in and do it. Like I said, I've kind of become an expert at the one computer classroom where we share things back and forth. And even doing it that way, there's so much insight that the kids can get and practice and things to look at on their own. I love the idea of Quizlet. I'm going to have to check that one out.
Well, wonderful. I think I need to give some time to Cody, our historian from Texas. And Cody, I'm kind of wondering, in your experience as a history teacher, and maybe you can even go back to the pandemic, because we had this real change over the last few years in education where we were doing remote learning and hybrid learning, and now we've got AI learning, and it just seems like so many things are coming at us. So I wonder if you could share a little bit of your own perspective.
Yeah, going back to the pandemic, that was a crazy time. I was out of school in Waco, Texas, and it was more of a kind of a lower income school, and it was tough to get the kids to do anything. They weren't used to learning that way, and they didn't have a lot of parental guidance at home helping them out. And so, we'd send assignments out for 60 kids. I might get 2 of them to turn it in when they shut schools down. I mean, because we hadn't really done the online model or the hybrid model. So, we put them on Google Classroom. They were already at home, and some of them hadn't ever used it before. So that was a rough time in education. But moving forward now, I've worked to get my class more and more, basically paperless. We do have one-to-one at the school I'm at. I've used Google Classroom and other online tools, and so we've kind of been working towards that. I guess I started hearing about the Chat GPT. It was probably this spring or so, and at my school they kind of panicked as soon as the word got out. They blocked it from all the kids' computers, and like, no, we don't need to use this. And I just kind of had a different perspective. I just think, if it's out there, and kids need to learn how to use it, how to learn from it, how to, trying to think of the right word to say, but how to utilize it to help them learn, because it's not going to go away. It's going to keep growing. And like you say, I think it's really early in the process right now, and so I don't know exactly what it's going to evolve into, but I think it's pretty obvious it's going to evolve into a useful tool. And so I've played around with ChatGPT. I haven't really used it in the classroom a lot. I use it to help me write a couple of emails to parents and stuff, just kind of the wording and stuff, and then I would proofread it and change some stuff, but just kind of give me some ideas. And I just played around with it, having it, write essays and stuff, seeing what it looked like. Like I say, our kids didn't get a chance to really use it because they were we have a lot of older teachers. I think it kind of scared them. Like, this is something that's going to really change things, and we don't know how to handle this. So let's just block it. That was kind of the process at our school that they went to. But like I say, I'm excited about it. I think that I think it can definitely help us in our job. Like Heather said earlier with lesson planning, me being a teacher and a coach, time-wise is got to be very efficient with your time. If it can help me make lesson planning more efficient, grading, things like that, I'm all about that. because I'd rather spend my time actually teaching the kids, building relationships with them, and working on that stuff instead of spending hours doing lesson planning.
Well, I think we're moving on to the future of education and the future of personalized learning. And before I asked the teachers, I was looking at an old article. I printed it out here, kind of went old school, and I printed it out, and it says, "Will AI-enabled tech be the great classroom equalizer?" And it's an article that Bill actually authored some time ago. When was that? It was back in May, and he asked that question, and I think that's a really great question to be asking. And Bill, did you want to take a gander at that to provide an answer to that yourself? I know you did in the article, and people can read that article. It's a really great article. But did you want to say anything about, will AI-enabled tech be the great classroom equalizer?
Yeah, I mean, let's sort of frame the problem with a bit more detail, just so that we understand what it is we're talking about here. There's a lot of disparity. There's a lot of differences in the U.S. across our education system, our public education system, and if you include the private education system, I mean, it even gets worse, right? There's worse in the sense that there's a very big swing between the poorest schools and classrooms and the best funded schools and classrooms. And the resources available to the students and the resources available to the teachers can vary enormously. But what we know, what data tells us, is that if we can provide teachers more resources, better resources, and allow them to have more time with each student individually, we will get better outcomes. How does technology do that? Well, technology can solve this problem or help us get closer to that solution in a number of ways. As a productivity assistant to the teacher, it can take a lot of load off of our teachers' backs and cover some of the busy work. My mom was a teacher her entire career. My daughter was a TA in a very poorly funded school in Chicago. We sort of, I sort of grew up and as an adult, I've been experienced to these, very, very big differences between where I went to school in a well-funded school district and where my mom taught in a private school and where my daughter was a TA in a public school in a very low-income community. All of the problems in the best funded school down to the least funded school come down to, do we have the resources to help these children? And does the teacher have the time to help these children? And oftentimes the teachers are just playing catch up or just trying to deal with the fires that they have to deal with. And technology can step in here and kind of equalize the playing field. And certainly the better funded schools can do this with all of the resources and money that they can throw into each individual classroom. But technology is a great equalizer in the sense that it allows us to do more with less, and it serves every teacher in the same way. It's not that you're going to get a better AI over here in a better funded school district than you would in a low income school district. The AI can work consistently for everyone in the same way at the same cost, and it can sort of level the playing field in that sense. The other thing here is that the AI and technology can be very adaptive to the students' needs, right? And I want to be clear here that I'm not talking about technology that replaces teachers. There has certainly been a very big focus in EdTech for a very long time, where we tried to build better teachers through technology, meaning like we tried to simulate what a teacher was teaching with technology, right? We tried to build programs that would adapt to the students' needs, that would basically supplant the curriculum in the classroom, teach the materials, and the adoption of those technologies meant that the teacher had to adopt that way of teaching. The teacher had to step to the side and say, okay, this program, contains the curriculum, this program contains the lesson plans. I'm here as tech support or as a coach, or I'm off to the side, and I have to learn the technology and implement it, but the technology becomes the teacher. And again, that's a very that's sort of the old way of thinking about things. In the new world, with the AI that we have today, with the technology that we have today, I believe that the path forward here to level the playing field is by providing all of our teachers with tools which help them increase their productivity, put tools in the classroom that allow us to have adaptive one-on-one time with the students, meaning that AI tutors, for example, AI teaching assistants, things that can be leveraged on a one-on-one basis that can help the student, coach them, guide them through what the teacher is teaching, but not replace the teacher. And again, the productivity tools can't be underscored here or undercounted here, because it's not just about generating lesson plans. It's not just about auto grading assignments, which are all great things, and we definitely should be doing those things. But thinking about the tools and technology we have in business today, like in an online business, it would be crazy to think that an online business doesn't have an analytics platform which has AI integrated into it in a way that can help them predict what they should be doing better in their online business to increase their business outcomes. We go to YouTube, we go to Netflix, we go to Amazon. All of these platforms have AI integrated into them to help us make better decisions as customers of those platforms, to help drive better outcomes for those businesses. That technology can be adapted to the classroom in a way that we're able to give teachers signals that a potential problem is emerging, or here's a recommendation that we have, or here's something for you to pay attention to. Because the same algorithms, the same technology, the same processes that happen in those, hey, watch this YouTube video, those can be leveraged to say, hey, you have a student struggling in a way over here that we predict they're going to have a problem in 2 weeks, and here's an intervention, or here's a thing for you to pay attention to. That type of productivity tool, which lets a teacher really find the signals that they need to act in the classroom, that's the thing that levels the playing field across the board for my money. That's the thing that we need to be working on, the thing that ultimately, at the end of the day, every teacher should have in their classroom.
Wow, really, really good. Lot to chew on there, Bill. I want to continue on this future of education, future of personalized learning theme, and I have a few questions for the teachers. A few questions I want to just throw out there, and then leave it open once again to hear Heather, Cody, or Marianne chime in on some of these questions. What do you think is AI's main shortfall right now? Do you think it's solvable? I'm going to give some more questions here. What makes you most excited about AI in education? Why is that? As a teacher, how do you think technology could make your job easier? And which parts of your job shouldn't be taken over by technology? So those are a few questions I have. If one of those stood out for you and you could think of an answer you wanted to share, I'd love to have you chime in.
Okay, I'll chime in. I'll go with the most excited thing about AI. I want to follow up with what Bill said. With being able to figure out interventions and what the students need on an individual level. Sometimes, when it's one teacher and you're in a class of 25, sometimes 30 kids, it can be tough to figure out exactly what every kid's struggling with. So if we had the program, the AI that could help decipher that, and I think that'd be very helpful. Because then you can go in and you can know what you need to help that particular student with.
Okay, so I have labs in my classes. Well, this year tech will be even a bigger thing in my classroom because of the project Lead the Way, which is a completely class based on the computer. I'll be learning some new software actually in the next couple of days. I'm pretty excited about that. But I think that the big thing that I noticed, or the thing that I thought AI could definitely help me with, is when we're doing labs, that's always an issue. Especially if I have a larger class, let's say I have 24 of them, often I'll find, we have an issue with the lab, or let's say somebody's lab's not working. And so now I have to run back and I have to get some new solvent or something. I have to set something else up. I could have AI helping my students with questions maybe that it could help them or probe them. And that's what I noticed on what Quizlet was doing with me, is that it was probing. I could ask it, or I could answer a question and I could answer it in kind of a vague way and it would push me a little deeper. I could answer it in a very deep way and it could actually ask me even deeper questions. So I was very excited about it. My husband actually just got out of education. He's doing more of a college level, working with students in workforce. And I was just geeking out about how exciting this would be to use in my classroom when I'm having labs, because it's always an issue that I call them my birds, are all chirping at the same time. They all want to be fed and I'm only one person and I can only get there so fast. So that is the biggest way I could see it. Then, we use Canvas. So Canvas is very helpful for, speed grading, helping me give the students feedback right now in the classroom. And I think being able to touch base with them every day, that's my biggest thing. I try to have a conversation with each one of them and critique some of their work in their journal or whatever they're doing. That's a big deal. And I think that is what AI could enable me to have some free time to do that better.
Great. Marianne, did you have some thoughts on any of those questions? And I can also repeat the questions just to kind of refresh everybody's mind.
I want to go back and read Bill's article because as a reading and an English teacher, that's what we're looking for, because each one of our kids is in a different place. One of the tools that the state of Florida has given us, our new state assessment, breaks reading skills down into smaller increments. So when I get a report on a student, it no longer just tells me they're struggling with vocabulary. It tells me they're struggling with multisyllabic words, or they're struggling with knowledge of prefixes and suffixes. And so it really breaks it down for me. But when I have 26 kids in a classroom, that's 26 discrete skills that I have to program for. Now I know what those skills are, but in attempting to program for them, that's where things get tough. And I think what you were talking about with Quizlet and some of the other programs that are out there are what's going to be able to help us to, you can't take a middle school kid and teach them the long A sound by circling it in words. It's degrading and humiliating for the kids. And so, but there are programs out there that if we can harness them, we can meet the kids where they are and move them forward. We've just got to be able to harness that information. And we're getting there, but we're not there yet.
All right. Wow. Well, very good. Anybody else want to chime in on Heather, Cody, Marianne, or even Bill on what makes you most excited about AI in education? And maybe you can give me an example, or you could just tell me something that you've come across. I mean, I know you all do a lot of reading and scouring, and you have your favorite podcasts, you have your favorite sources of information that you that you learn more about this coming AI wave, this new thing. And I wanted to just pick your brains about that and really get what really makes you excited and that you see has some potential there. Maybe you haven't even used it, or maybe you have, but is there anything else?
I'll just jump in and tell you that the thing that I'm most excited about is hearing them talk about their challenges in the classroom and what they need. I know that AI and EdTech in general can solve these challenges, and the impact will be enormous, right? This problem that Marianne's talking about, where Marianne, I hope you do read that article, because I address exactly that in the article, that, teachers are outnumbered, oftentimes 30-1, and the kids aren't all at the same level. And how do you give each one individual attention, right? And you can think about this in a number of ways. You have the kids that want to go forward, they want to go faster. You have the kids that are struggling to be at level. And then you have the kids in the middle, and it's a spectrum. It's nobody in there is fitting into a perfect mold where you can kind of like move the class forward in lockstep. I'm really excited about the impact that these technologies will have in solving these problems and help our learners get exactly what they need so they can move forward at their pace. And have a positive, our teachers give our students a positive experience in the classroom. But unfortunately, because they're outnumbered, oftentimes this can turn negative, and it can turn into an experience where they don't develop a lifelong love of learning, right? And this is what our teachers want to foster. And I think that with some help, where they're not so outnumbered, I think we can have a huge impact here with these technologies.
Bill, could you share a little bit of what you all have learned at Brainly? I know you've been kind of partnering formally with some of the GPT technology, and could you share any lessons you've learned? I mean, I think it's been a 2-year process or a 3-year process.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very early adopters, and we were working with the folks over at OpenAI, the folks who make GPT. We've been working with them before this was a public project. And it's a mixed bag, right? I think that generative AI is not by itself a solution. It's how we apply it. And we oftentimes have to augment this technology, augment the generative AI that you get out of the box with ChatGPT. We have to augment it with context about what's happening in the classroom. So some of the things that we've worked on and we've seen great success with is taking the language of the classroom, the vocabulary, the lesson plans, the context of what is the student learning, what have they been exposed to and should know by now, and what's coming next, taking all of this context and incorporating it with this generative AI to get better outcomes. That seems to be the right combination. The thing that helps us take it from a generalized, hey, I can ask it a question, it'll give me an answer, but it may introduce vocabulary words I've never heard before. And is that a good experience for me as a young learner, where I'm already frustrated with a topic and now you're throwing words at me that I've never heard? That's frustrating. But reinforcing the vocabulary, reinforcing the predicate concepts, right? Setting them up for the successor concepts and saying, okay, I'm going to frame this in a way that builds on what you know. That is sort of the sweet spot for this technology. And I think that it's not easy to do. So it's a work in progress, but I feel like that is the right combination that our teachers will benefit from.
All right. Well, we do have some time still, and I wanted to emphasize or re-ask the question, one of my last questions here, which was, as a teacher, how do you think technology could make your job easier? And which parts of your job shouldn't be taken over by technology?
Technology can never take away the student-teacher relationships that some kids desperately need in order to learn. I love tech. I have fun using it. I shouldn't say I love it because it frustrates me, but I enjoy the challenge of how do I use this in my classroom. Um, but nothing will take away the look in a kid's eyes when the light bulb goes on.
Yeah, I'll follow up Marianne there. That I agree with her 100%. You can't replace that student-teacher relationship. And I don't know if it's this way everywhere, but in Texas, there's a major shortage of teachers, and I think pay is obviously one of the issues, but also just teachers being overwhelmed with you know just keeping adding more and more on her plate, and then you get a school and you don't have enough people, and then that just makes it worse because there's a shortage. So if technology AI can come in and take some of that load off teachers, get more people to come back into the classroom, uh, to do a very important job. I think that that would be very big.
Well, just because I just tried the Magic, what was it called? Magic School AI, and it did give me again a layout of lesson plan that I might want to do, or even unit plans. It could even do unit plans. But I won't lie that being able to create my lessons is one of the most fun parts of my job. I absolutely love it. It's grading is not my favorite, but planning my lessons. And my husband's always like, why are you rewriting this? You've been doing this for 15 years. Because that is what I do for biology, especially. There's just so many things. There's too many things and it changes. And so I'm constantly rewriting that. And I don't want AI doing that for me, but it wasn't. And that's what I found. It wasn't. It was suggesting these are some things that you can do, and then you could bloom it from there. So that's what I found, at least with Magic School. And I thought, especially as a beginning teacher, what a help to have a skeleton like that to build off of. That's really what I thought. So I don't want it to completely write it for me, but making suggestions is definitely wonderful. It takes a little of the legwork out, definitely.
I really like what you said there about how a great teacher is always challenging herself to keep learning and keep tweaking and adjusting because kids change over the years, and in some sense they're the same, but at the same time, we get further apart from them in age. And I went to an early adolescent conference once where they said, you were never their age, no matter how much you think you're their age. Like they're growing up in a completely different world. None of this stuff existed when we were kids, So it kind of takes this act of imaginative empathy to kind of place ourselves in their shoes and try to imagine, what is a kid in my classroom today? How are they seeing all of this? They're growing up with touch screens and things that we could never imagine. And so I kind of wonder if maybe the teachers here would agree, is this just kind of, in some ways this is new, but in some ways it's part of what you've always done as teachers, and it's just the next step. What do you think? I see Heather nodding. Marianne's laughing. I'll take that as a good sign. It's really something, though, that I've also been thinking about. If I was in the classroom today, what would I go to and what would I use? And maybe you can list off the options out there. You've mentioned a few different softwares, and Bill, I believe Brainly has something where when you're studying for a math test, you can get like a short explanation of the answer or a long explanation of the answer, which can help with math in particular, because just even being able to write out the answer, you can Google that, but knowing how to explain how you got the answer, maybe that's something that ChatGPT and AI can do. And
some of the things that I've been sharing with you, some of the ideas that I've been talking about are things that we're actively working on. And this is years of work. Again, far before ChatGPT came along, we've been working on these things and studying this problem. In fact, I had a dedicated research team just studying the problems of teachers. I would love to have a tool in your hands that you feel comfortable giving to your students that can help your students get the questions they would ask you answered whenever they need to have that answer, right? Whenever they might raise their hand, or, you have, like Marianne said, 26 students in the classroom and they all need individual attention. Sometimes that attention is simply, I have a question and I need an answer. Can you help me with this thing? And I'd love for our technology to give the answer you would have given and be something you feel comfortable telling your students, yeah, this is something you can use. I would support this. And I don't want to build something that's generalized as like ChatGPT. Again, I want it highly aligned with how you teach and what you're teaching.
Wow, now that's very intriguing. That's interesting. We are actually closing in on the time allotted for all this, but I was thinking maybe if we do sort of final thoughts, any last statement, anything you want to throw in or emphasize about either AI in education, teaching today, the future of learning, anything you want to say that any little buzz phrase that you want to say, anything that you feel is important that you want to leave off on, and then we'll I think that'll pretty much wrap it up. And I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank Heather, Cody, Marianne, and Bill and Sean. And this has been very interesting and a good learning experience. So we could start with Heather.
Well, I would say I'm really excited to see AI and how I might use it in my classroom, especially as I start my new classes that I will have this year at John Glenn. And I really enjoyed being a part of this today. So it's really exciting to kind of see how this will start new avenues in my classroom. So thank you for letting me be a part today, guys. I appreciate it.
And Marianne.
Oh, first of all, thank you. I have enjoyed listening to everybody, and I hope Noah talked about the fact that they're going to send out our names so that I can keep in touch with you guys. Lots of questions, lots of challenges, but it's exciting. The changes that are happening in education as a result of technology are amazing. I had a classic Mac in my classroom in 1979. And so it's really cool to see the kinds of things that are happening today.
All right. Cody.
I'd like to just follow up. Yeah, it's an exciting time in education. There's a lot of crazy new technologies coming out. Things are just changing really fast. Just crazy when I started, 14, 15 years ago to now, how different it is. But it's exciting. I think, as educators, it's our job to kind of keep up with the technology and prepare kids for the way it's going to be in the future. I think in a lot of ways, education is kind of stuck in the past. And, hopefully some of these new technologies we can kind of get up to speed and get on board with, the way the world's going to be, because that's the world we're trying to prepare these kids for.
Awesome. Very well put. And Bill.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody, Victor, Sean, Heather, Marianne, Cody. Really appreciate you guys doing this. And I'm inspired and encouraged by hearing our teachers today talk about, how they're using technology, what they want out of technology. I do think that we're going to see a huge amount of progress over the next 5 years. I've been doing EdTech, working in EdTech now for about 20 years, and I can tell you that it's frustrating how slow things move. But I see the next 5 years eclipsing the last 20 in terms of progress. So I'm very excited. And I think, hearing you guys talk, it just makes that more clear to me that we're right there. We're ready to tip to the turning point.
Awesome. Well, that's really hopeful words. Sean, any last words from you?
I'm just really grateful to be part of this and co-moderate with you, Victor. And I feel like I learned a lot today. So thank you all very much for joining us.
All right. Well, that concludes our show. So thank you, everybody. And we'll be signing off.